Hello, and thank you for taking some time to learn more about interviewing. If you are listening to this webinar, you may have an upcoming interview that you are preparing for, or perhaps you are at a stage in your academic career where you anticipate an upcoming interview, or in another case, you might be curious to learn more about interviewing, whether it be for a job, internship, fellowship, or graduate school. Interviewing can be a very exciting time. As you start to think about your career aspirations and the many ways in which you can lend your talents and make a difference in the world around you. It can also be a time of great anxiety and nervousness as you worry about the process and whether or not you will be able to give the quote unquote right answers. Whether the interviewer or interviewers like you, or perhaps you are preoccupied with the fear of being rejected. Luckily, there are ways to mitigate this anxiety by understanding both the interview process as well as what employers, organizations, and graduate schools are looking for when meeting with potential candidates. Accordingly, during this presentation, we will give you the tools and strategies that you will need in order to prepare and position yourself for success in any interview. So welcome to Interviewing, a Career Essentials workshop presented by Career Education. Career education at Wellesley's interviewing resources are centered around the 4 pillars, or the 4 Ps: preparation, presentation, proficiency, and partnership, which serve as the foundation for a successful interviewing experience. Since we will be on this slide for a while, I would encourage you to listen and perhaps reflect, take notes if you wish, and know that all of these materials and resources can be found on Career Education's website at www.wellesley.edu/career education. Getting back to the 4 pillars, as you think about these 4 pillars from beginning to end, we want to provide you with a little bit more information about each of these 4 Ps. The first section, preparation, includes information on how to plan your research on industries, companies, graduate school programs, roles, and responsibilities, as well as ways to practice interviewing. Next is presentation, which will help you make a great first impression by covering attire, planning logistics, interview etiquette, and staying focused. Third is proficiency, which addresses the skill set that interviewers look for in candidates, various types of interviews, and sample interview questions. And lastly is partnership. And partnership will guide you on how to assess culture and share strategies to aid you in determining your fit within an organization or program. We are excited to share this information with you and encourage you to use it in conjunction with the diverse array of tools, resources, and events career education offers to assist you. We would also encourage you to take a look at the resources on self-exploration and self-assessment, as well as career exploration. So please do not hesitate to reach out to career education, the college career mentor team, or any of the career community advisors with questions. So there's so much that we are excited to tell you about interviewing and truly want to stress and encourage scheduling individual appointments with members of our team. We are all here to support you through the interview process and help you do your best. So let's dive into these pillars in a little bit more detail so that you can have information. And I encourage you at any point that it would be helpful to pause this webinar and take some time to reflect. As we further begin, let's talk more about interview preparation. As you begin to prepare, remember that an interview is essentially a conversation between two people to determine mutual fit. At the end of the conversation, the interviewer should be able to determine whether or not you are able to perform the responsibilities required for the job, internship, fellowship, or program. And you will be able to determine whether or not the organization and role are the right next steps for your talents, taking into consideration your interests, academics, and career exploration. Do your research. Research the company. Learn as much as you can about the field, the company or organization, and each person you will be meeting with. Do a Google search or online search of any kind on the company. Read about the industry in news articles and blogs, and look up the individuals that you will be meeting on LinkedIn. You are able to access additional industry and career guides such as Going Global and Vault that are two subscription-based resources that you have access to on Handshake, as well as information on your specific career community. Lastly, explore joining student or professional organizations to learn about your field from fellow members and networking events. Practice. This is something that is so important, and again, a great way to connect further with career education. Practice describing your background and accomplishments concisely and positively. You should think of this process as communicating your personal pitch. In creating your pitch, try putting yourself in the employer's shoes and incorporate experiences that the employer would want to know about you. Additionally, it will help to prepare 3 to 5 accomplishment stories using the STAR framework. So what does STAR stand for? Situation, task, action, results. This STAR framework or STAR technique is a strategy to answer behavioral interview questions, which again is something that we will come back to, and explain key skills that you will bring to the role. In thinking about approaching your interview, it may be helpful to keep the following questions in mind and start developing your responses. Remember, an interview is a conversation, so you will also need to ask relevant questions to the employer that demonstrate your understanding of the role, company, or industry trends. Take a look at both sets of questions before you begin your practice. Again, a friendly reminder that all of these resources are on our website in the interviewing section. for career education. A more thorough explanation of the types of interview questions that may be asked are covered in the proficiency section. The second pillar is presentation. Presenting yourself professionally will come more naturally if you have done your due diligence to prepare for the interview. After you thoroughly research the employer, the role, and yourself, you will be ready to focus on your presentation skills. These skills are essential to demonstrate from the time you respond to an invitation for an interview to the time you send thank you notes to the interviewers. Aim to be your most genuine, positive, and polite self. As much as you possibly can, try to view the interview process as a learning experience and enjoy it. Please consult the online interviewing materials on Career Education's website for more information regarding interview preparation. So again, we have many specific sections that will speak to these 4 Ps on our website. The third pillar is proficiency. Much of an interviewing process is variable. It can vary based on the interviewer, the role, the organization, the needs of the program, admissions requirements, the industry, and so on. For example, this can include how formal the interview process is, the attire recommended for the interview, or the method of interviewing used by an interviewer. Of the 4 pillars discussed, the one pillar that is core to the interviewing process and that does not vary in its importance is proficiency. After the interview, the interviewer must be able to speak to your competency and, in some instances, mastery of the skills required for the opportunity. Communicating value add. To determine how to communicate value add to a position, we recommend 3 steps. Number 1, review the opportunity description to understand what skills are required and preferred. What do you need to be successful in this opportunity? What are the differences in the required versus the preferred sections? Number 2, reference the research and informational interviews you have conducted and your application materials. What did you learn from your conversations about skills? What did you highlight in your application that was meaningful? How did you tell your story? Number 3, reflect on your coursework, internships, and volunteer experiences. What skills have you gained? If there are gaps, look to your transferable skills. What have you done in your past that will make you successful here? Do your best to maximize the interview by giving clear, thoughtful answers that allow you to, 1, answer the question while simultaneously, 2, showing proficiency as well. This will allow you to both instill confidence and communicate your proficiency. For questions where examples are not readily available, highlight transferable skills. Transferable skills are competencies that are not tied to a specific function or industry. These competencies can be applied to a variety of opportunities and sectors. The fact that these skills, quote unquote, transfer with you allows you to leverage these skills in new situations and gives you an advantage in a new role. The ability to articulate transferable skills and experience is vital as an applicant. It is often assumed that the transferability of the skill is evident, but that is often not the case. It is the responsibility of you, the candidate, to ensure that the applicability of these competencies and the experiences to the new opportunity or program are communicated clearly in the interview. And this leads us to the fourth pillar, partnership. Finding the fit between you and an environment is integral to building a satisfying and successful career. In 1909, Frank Parsons, who is known as the architect of career guidance and counseling services in the United States, developed the framework of person-environment fit. This model supports the idea that people should develop a clear understanding of themselves, gain knowledge of occupational or educational opportunities, and engage in a decision-making process that would incorporate this knowledge of self and occupations. An interview is one way that you can gain a clearer understanding of both. Parsons' idea of finding the fit between oneself and environment is so foundational to career services that many researchers and practitioners have built their own career frameworks and interventions based off of his original model. This demonstrates why you cannot overlook your potential fit when interviewing with an organization. With that in mind, you must first evaluate your professional and personal needs that you would like to fulfill through your next opportunity. In addition, you must also assess what the organization's needs are and how you would contribute to its mission and goals. This will allow you to determine the extent of your fit with an organization. What are your deal breakers? What are your preferences? Does this opportunity make sense when looking at your short-term and long-term goals? What do research and your informational interviews tell you about the culture? Here are some factors you will want to brainstorm as you undergo an interview process. And here's where I would encourage you, again, at any point, to pause this webinar and take out a notebook or perhaps use a document online and take some notes. Identities. You have multiple identities and they come from various aspects of your life. Some of your identities may be linked to experiences you have had or to communities to which you belong. Others may be connected to your interests, values, personality, activities, or other parts of your life. So here are some questions for you to consider. What facets of your overall identity are fundamental to you regardless of your environment? Another question is, how do your core identities fit your prospective environment? The next is values. Every organization and person has values. Values define culture. For instance, Wellesley College believes in making a difference, disciplined thinking, valuing diversity, pragmatic leadership, and service. So here are some questions for you to consider. What are your values? What values do you look for in an organization? What is the mission statement of the organization you are considering? To what extent do your values intertwine with those of your potential organization? The next section is interests. Wellesley College provides a liberal arts education in which students and alumni have had multiple opportunities to explore a diverse range of topics. So here's a question for you. What topics pique your curiosity? The next, what problems do you like to solve? Is there a theme in which problems you like to tackle? Are there ones that engage your interests more naturally than others? Which subjects do you find yourself thinking about most frequently? Is there potential for you to explore these topics in your prospective organization? And finally, to what degree does the organization care about solving the same problems you would like to solve? Let's move on now to skills. Take some time to think about what you've done as a student here at Wellesley. What skills have you developed throughout your life? Skills can include communication, organization, critical thinking, and technical abilities, just to name a few. To what extent do your skills align with the organization where you are interviewing? Strengths. At Wellesley College and throughout your career journey, you have developed a variety of skills. Which ones are your greatest strengths? It is important to identify not only what you do well, but what you do best and with the most ease. How much will your prospective organization allow you to maximize your strengths? Next, let's move on to areas of improvement. While it is crucial to find a career that focuses on your strengths, it is also important to acknowledge that you may have some weaknesses or areas of improvement. When you are evaluating an opportunity, which parts of it do you feel less confident about tackling? What types of knowledge and skills will you need to build in order to competently handle your more challenging tasks or projects? Here is where I'm going to pause, because if you are referring back to the materials that we have On our career education website, you will see that we have a variety of additional areas regarding personality traits, professional development, lifestyle, and so on. So I would encourage you to take some time and reflect upon the 4 Ps. In addition to the 4 Ps, we would encourage you to review the interviewing checklist that covers topics before, during, and after the interview. Feel free to pause this video to reflect more on the 4 Ps. Now we're going to transition just a bit to talking more specifically about virtual interviewing. I mentioned a bit earlier in the presentation that there are several different types of interviews: behavioral interviews, case interviews, and while many of you right now are likely going to be interviewing via video or perhaps phone, we recommend scheduling individual appointments so that you can speak with your college career mentor or career community advisor more about specific interviewing techniques based upon the opportunity or opportunities that you anticipate having interviews for. So certainly some of the strategies for a phone interview, in-person interview, or virtual interview are going to be different. So we're going to briefly focus this part of the presentation on virtual interviewing. So we want to make sure that these considerations are on your mind as you think a bit more about doing perhaps a Zoom or Skype interview, or perhaps you might be using another platform. So we want to encourage you to think about your location. Location is important. So finding a space that's quiet, semi-private, or private if you can, are best. Public locations can certainly be challenging and obviously present some extra noise. So we would advise you to avoid conducting interviews outdoors where wind, traffic noises, and other people's voices could be picked up in the background. As you likely know, being able to fully be present and immersed during the interview process is going to be important. So being mindful of your location and all of this background noise in advance is going to be helpful to mitigate any of those additional distractors. Good lighting is important. So again, if you are going to be interviewing in a virtual space, please keep in mind employers want to see your face clearly. So make sure that a window or light source is not behind you. A light source should be in front of you. So again, just as much as you might practice interview questions with your college career mentor or career community advisor or another trusted source, the tips that we're providing you in this webinar, such as being mindful of your location and lighting, are going to be important to test out in advance. Equally, having good audio is important. If you need to, use headphones with a microphone to minimize picking up background feedback. You can use the mute function to minimize picking up distracting noises when you are not speaking. Again, if that's something that you need to do. Just as I mentioned a few moments ago, testing and practicing are equally important here. So please test the interviewing technology ahead of time to minimize glitches on the interview day. Be sure you understand the program settings for which platform you might be using. Appearances are important. Again, our interviewing resources go into more detail about dress. But in terms of thinking about a virtual interview, we would advise you to sit in a chair where you will not slouch. And sometimes we know that is easier said than done. To dress professionally and be aware of your background. So, as you may know, on virtual platforms like Zoom, you can use a staged or more professional background, or some might refer to that as a virtual background. As you'll notice on this slide, we are providing you with some additional resources for support. The first is how to make a good impression in a virtual interview. The second is 4 strategies for nailing the video interview. And the third is 5 essential tips for video and Skype interviews. So again, those may be articles or resources that you would like to investigate a little bit further. Feel free to pause the presentation and write down any specific notes or questions that you'd like to come back to about virtual or video interviewing. Now we're going to transition a bit and you will have an opportunity to practice. So again, the resources on our website have a whole host of questions that we would encourage you to take a look at and practice. Certainly in a mock interview, we can help you with this as well. Here is the first sample question. So again, what I hope and I would invite you to do is to think about how you would answer this question. And perhaps you've received it at some other point, whether that be an interview or someone that you just meet says to you, tell us about yourself. Now, your strategy for how you would answer that question if you were meeting someone new for the first time is certainly going to be different than it would be if an employer was asking you that question. So these are the questions that I would like you to consider. Why do employers ask you this question? And what is the strategy for answering it? So take some time to reflect on your answer to this question and how you would approach it. The second sample question is, why are you interested in this role or potentially company or field? So again, I'm going to invite you to discuss the answer to this question in an individual appointment with your college career mentor or career community advisor, and talk with them more about why employers ask this question and what is the strategy for answering this question. Here is the third sample question. Tell me about a time when you overcame an obstacle or had to deal with competing priorities, failure, etc. So think about, if you will, Why do employers ask this question? And what is the strategy for answering? And here is the fourth sample question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? So you might reflect upon how you would answer that question. And then think a bit about why employers might ask this question and what is the strategy for answering. The fifth sample question. What do you enjoy outside of work? What are your interests or hobbies? So again, feel free to pause here. You might think about why do employers ask this question and what is the strategy for answering? If it's helpful to you, you might verbalize your responses. You might write down some notes if that's a better strategy for you to start to think about how you would approach answering these questions. So those are 5 questions, but there are many, many more. I want to provide now a few tips and reminders. You should also have questions prepared for the interviewer. Again, on our resources for career education on our website, we have several different sample questions that you might ask employers. However, I will tell you that I think some of the best questions that students generate are ones that they really truly care about finding out the answer. So I would think deeply about the questions that are most on your mind. However, to help you get started, we've posed a few good examples here. The first, can you tell me more about, in this case, either the office, the culture, or the particular work environment? The second, what are some challenges or successes that the person in this particular role that you've applied for can expect? The third question, what is the assessment process for this role? After the interview, as you might remember, I mentioned an interviewing checklist. This can be found on Career Education's website. Our recommendation is to send thank you emails 24 hours after the interview. I hope after watching and listening to this webinar that there are many questions or perhaps other curiosities that you have about interviewing that we can help you with. I hope this has provided an overall good place for you to come to for guidance in terms of the interview process. So we greatly thank you from Wellesley Career Education for taking some time to be engaged in this process, to learn, to think deeply, and to reflect on all of the unique gifts, talents, and strengths that make you special and unique. Our office is here to support you, and we look forward to speaking with you more soon about your interview tips and strategies and helping you feel confident and successful with the next steps in your career journey. Thank you for listening today. and we hope to see you soon.